Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome this Thursday. Everything Cooperative is our show. We talk about the benefits of co-ops. And this morning, we have on the line with us Miss Rita Haynes. Good morning, Miss Haynes. Mrs. Haynes, good morning.
Yes.
How are you today?
Oh, very good. And how are you, sir?
I am excellent. Glad to have you on. What really interested in talking about your credit union in Cleveland, Faith Credit Union.
Right. Faith Community United Credit Union in Cleveland, Ohio.
Faith. So I understand it got started in 1952, and you got started with it in 1958 as a volunteer right after you got married. Is that right?
That's correct. Right out of high school, my husband and I opened our first joint account at Mount Sinai Baptist Church Credit Union, which was what it was called at that time.
Mount Sinai Baptist Church Credit Union. What was it like way back there in the dinosaur years, that way long time ago?
Well, it was a very small credit union, and it was having difficulty surviving. The members of the church were saving 25 cents a Sunday to build up to the required $5 share count. Everything was volunteer, and when I started, the record keeping, the minutes and things like that were poor, so they sort of asked us to start working with them to help them with the record keeping, and that's how I got involved and continued to be involved, both my husband and I, from there.
1958, out of high school.
Right.
Young and chipper and volunteering.
Yes, for sure.
How long did you volunteer?
Well, I volunteered until almost 1989. We did a lot in between that time. We volunteered to do more than record keeping. I started secretary of the board of directors. And then from there, we started going to the various chapter schools. At that time, Ohio Credit Union League had individual chapters. I started serving on the chapter, and we were quite interested in paving the way for our people to compile credit and borrow and save from each other. And we were particularly interested in the cooperative principles of people helping people, self-help, and equality, because the banks were redlining and not giving us the best deal in our communities for our people.
Some people out there may not know what redlining is, so what is redlining?
Well, it's not allowing you to live in the area that you would desire to live in. The banks had artificial lines drawn where when people wanted to purchase a house, they could not do it in certain areas. And our thinking was, if we owned our own financial institution and we were able to loan money to each other, that would help us to be able to live wherever we wanted to live. But of course, we were very small, so there were only so many real estate loans that we could give. But we were also very powerful politically, because we took part with all of the elections, and we worked with the NAACP and the Cleveland Business League and the city of Cleveland. And as you know, Cleveland's where Mayor Carl B. Stokes became the first black mayor in the city. So we use that political power as well as our economic power to grow our small credit union and to work with the other credit unions in our area.
Wow. You volunteered for 31 years.
Yes.
I just did the math. And
yes.
Then you got very political. You started out taking care of the minutes right out of high school. So you, from like 18 years old, I'm just making here to 49 years old, you volunteered.
Yes.
So I assume did you work during that time and then volunteer at the credit union, or was it like full time?
Well, no, it was part-time. At that time, the credit union was only open on Sundays and Wednesdays, but the record-keeping went on during other times. But I worked with my husband, and I have to give him the most credit because he became later on the president of the credit union, and he was a real estate broker, and we started together in real estate. So I was his secretary. I was the secretary of the credit union, and for 5 years we didn't have children as planned so that we could save our income. We both worked full-time jobs. He started as a broker, and then he quit his full-time job. And when we had children, could still continue to work at the credit union as well as work as his secretary and a salesman in his office called Haynes Real Estate Company.
Oh, okay. So he started his own agency.
He started his own company and later became the president, the youngest president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. So he was quite active, and we both worked in everything together. And then when we started having children, I still volunteered at the credit union and acted as his secretary.
Well, you slid something in I want to go back and capture. You said you didn't have children for 5 years as planned. So you all planned when you were going to have children.
Yes, we planned to not have children until we could afford to buy our own house. And
okay, all right.
Planned Parenthood comes into play there, there's a lot of discussion about that today, but that was what we used to be able to not have children until we had purchased our own house. And we did that in 1962. When we worked, we saved one paycheck, and we paid our tithes at church and saved $5 out of every pay until we saved up enough for a down payment on a home.
Fantastic story. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did come to Cleveland in 1969, and I worked at Epiphany Catholic Church. I taught school there from 69 to 70.
Oh, yes. Well, Epiphany was one of our credit union members, and they helped us in working with the credit union later in time. We had an association called Inner City Association of Minority Credit Unions, and there were 26 minority credit unions in the city of Cleveland, and the Antioch Credit Union was the credit union that helped our credit union, our church, get started. Mm-hmm. And they had a Bible class called the Veterans Bible Class, and when the veterans came home from the war, they were unable to get loans because the banks would not loan them the money they needed, even with the GI Bill at that time.
Oh, my goodness.
And they were very upset, and they started the second credit union. The first one was started by Tuskegee Institute alumni. And when they started their credit union, they convinced our pastor that we could start one also. And they were very instrumental in helping us to start the credit union and also to help us continue to learn the different things and go to the different meetings and things that we had to go to. So that's a part of the story that I think is important today that we help one another, and that's what cooperative principles are all about, self-help and relying on each other to do what is right.
Well, I want to just talk about the values. Cooperative values are based on self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. And in the tradition of the founders, cooperative members believe in the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for one another. So
that's correct.
With these principles, they fit right in with Antioch or Epiphany or your church.
All of those principles are why we wanted to be in the credit union movement, because we respected the principles, and they also are the same principles that the Bible teaches, and our faith principles of helping one another and caring for each other and being honest. All of those are also faith principles that we held so dearly to.
Well, the other principles are volunteer and open membership. It doesn't make any difference about gender, race, political, religion. It's just open to anybody who wants to join. Democratic member control.
Yes, member control. Right, but at that time, the control was all. We were just one church. Each church had their own membership, and you could not have people from the community to be members unless they were members of the church or family members. And that we found was good to start, but as we got bigger, we wanted to do more, because if you only have a smaller pool of money to loan, you needed more in order to really impact your community. And so that is the reason we started looking at becoming a community development credit union and changed our name from Mount Sinai Baptist Church to Faith Community, so that we could not only help the members of our church, but be open to everyone in the community. And so that was done in about 1989. And our board was very forward-thinking in doing that.
So we're going to take our first break, but we have Mrs. Rita Haynes on the phone, and 31 years as a volunteer. And we'll talk more later about the other things that you have done. But we talked about the values of a cooperative, particularly now we're talking about a credit union, and we're talking about the principles of co-ops. We'll go and finish our 7 principles. We'll finish those. But, you know, Mrs. Haynes, there's an exciting story that you have here, and I'm really, really wanting to finish this break so we can get right back to it. Please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Okay, thanks.
Information is power. This is the reason that the National Cooperative Bank is sponsoring this program, to give you information about cooperatives, which would give you the power that Mrs. Haynes has already talked about. Mrs. Haynes has been working with Faith Credit Union in Cleveland. Started out very, very small, with people giving 25 cents every Sunday till they could build up to $5, which was the cost of membership. And the third principle, member economic participation. You have to put money into a co-op, and if there's a surplus, if there is profit, then the members can decide to give some of that back in forms of dividends, or keep it all within the business so they can make more loans and so forth. Ms. Haynes has a lot of power, but she talked about financial and political power with her and the people that were at the credit union. Ms. Haynes, so you started out just keeping the books. Where did you progress from there in your volunteer work? And I heard you say that your husband became president of the credit union. He had started his own brokerage firm, and you all worked together in the real estate broker firm as an agent selling real estate, and you all worked together in the credit union. So what's your other roles that you play within the credit union?
Well, being a small credit union, you played almost every role. I not only was a member of the board of directors, I also served as a teller. We had various committees, so we helped structure the credit union policies, and that was so important because those policies allowed us to do the lending and the other different kinds of things that our community needed in order for us to grow and to be within regulation. You know, we are a regulated institution, credit unions are today, and they're insured. So we had to develop policies that would help our people that were somewhat different from other credit unions that are in force today.
Well,
So
your policies were different. What can you give me an example of one of the policies that was different from other credit unions?
Well, one of the policies was to look at credit differently. When our lending policies, we had people who did not have access to regular credit reports and regular credit. For instance, day workers or some small companies who were just, I wouldn't say working under the table, but they did not have the regular structure, the necessary paperwork that normal companies would have. So we had to help teach as well as design policies. So the credit policies that we developed were to take the regular savings and their habits, their spending habits of paying rent and electrical bills and all of those into consideration when we granted loans. And so in that way we were able to assist all the people in our community and not just those who were able to have a regular good credit report.
So you're telling me that you all, the members, right? Your members create and vote on a board of directors, and then the board of directors set the policies, and you all set policies to loan folks money that didn't have good credit. That's what you're telling me.
That's correct.
Okay.
But we helped develop credit, and a lot of this came later because when you are discriminated against, part of the problem is that you develop bad habits. You borrow money from the corner store and just all kinds of bad habits, and we were trying to change those habits to force people, to our members who cared enough to save regularly, to also develop good habits, and then those good habits were reported to the credit bureau. And so therefore they had a good credit report where when they started with us they did not have credit.
So you're really into the fifth principle of education, training, and information.
Oh, yes. And we had education. We had volunteers in our credit union. We had an education committee. So all of these volunteers, the credit committee, the lending committee, all of these committees were also volunteer. And so we pulled people from the community who were interested, not only interested in the principles of self-help, but who had the ability to help change the mindset of our members. And we had annual shareholder meetings where we invited people who were notable in our community. We had Reverend Y.T. Walker during the time of civil rights movement. We had, as I mentioned, Carl Stokes, who was the mayor. We had Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor of Atlanta. We pulled all of the people, especially politicians who were running for office who would love to speak to a 500-member group at that time. And so we were able to encourage and inspire people who had been rejected at so many institutions before. And that was an important part, educating and motivating people to know that there was something better that they could do, and together we could do it in unison using these principles of self-help and respect for one another and equity and honesty and openness. You know, people would come and tell you their story about the problems they had faced, and then we made policies to help us to solve those problems. And one of them that was quite interesting was burials. Our credit union offered insurance with our shares. And if you had $2,000 in a share account, you also had $2,000 in insurance. And that sort of pushed us into the funeral business. So we helped people design their pre-need accounts. And so many of them had the insurance going to bury them. And so consequently, many of the funeral homes also became members of the credit union when we became community. That helped us to grow, and that also helped the members to have their loved ones buried or be buried as they wanted to. And that was the first one of the accounts that really helped us to grow, because pre-need accounts stayed in the credit union for a long time until the person died. So that helped our balance sheet to have more savings than the member would normally have in an account.
You know, I really wish I grew up in a little town called Bluefield, West Virginia.
Okay.
And we had some Haynes there, by the way.
Oh, good. Well, it might be Ken, but
yeah.
my husband's an only child.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure.
And my
but
father,
somewhere down the line, it might be.
My grandfather worked in the mines, and my father worked on the railroad. And there were things like they had script, so you had to go to the company store. So the only time I saw my grandfather was World War I vet, and my father was World War II. My father was a very strong man.
Mm-hmm.
But the only time I saw him weak was when he went to borrow money.
Yes.
Either because of bad habits or having the wrong mindset that you talk about, of getting people to change their mindset in terms of saving money when times are good.
Right.
It's seven fat calves and 7 lean calves, so 7 good years and 7 bad years. So saving money when times are good, or if it was the economy that was bad, whatever, he would go down to the man, if you will, and borrow money. It was always interesting to me. My sense is they would have been called usury interest rates now that he would have had to have paid.
Oh, yes.
To get that money for whatever.
Yes, that was very common. And it sapped out people of their dignity.
Yeah.
And this was what we wanted to turn around and give people the dignity that they deserved as they came to borrow money for whatever reason they had. And they were able to share those things because we were part of them and we knew their story and could empathize with what they were going through. So that is really how we grew. And the story of becoming from Mount Sinai Baptist Church to Faith Community was interesting because in order for us to serve our members, we needed a place other than the church basement.
Well, that's a good place to pause a minute for our second break, and we'll be right back to talk more about this journey from Mount Sinai to faith. Okay, we'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial. Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. The National Cooperative Bank sponsors this program. NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. And that's just why NCB is sponsoring this program. And today we have Mrs. Rita Haynes on the line with us from Cleveland, Ohio. And Mrs. Haynes was inducted into the Cooperative Hall of Fame last week, and I had an opportunity to meet her. She's about the size of my mother, about 5 foot, and carries a big stick. It was a pleasure meeting you. And we want to keep down this journey, particularly from Mount Sinai Baptist Church Credit Union, where you were limited to who could be members, only members of the church and their family, till you got into faith. At my church here in D.C., Shiloh Baptist, we merge our small credit union into a larger credit union. So my sense is that whoever rules credit unions was trying to get rid of the smaller ones and make them bigger for whatever reasons.
Yes.
Is that what happened to you guys, too?
That didn't happen to us, but it happened to most of the credit unions around us. Our credit union, Mount Sinai Baptist Church Credit Union, we made our own decision to change our charter to become a community development credit union, and that was based on a visit to New York City to the first annual faith-based conference of the National Federation of Community Development Credit Unions in New York. And Dr. Floyd Flake was our speaker at the time, and we found out that there were so many other black church credit unions, and black and white church. There are a lot of Catholic church credit unions who are faith-based credit unions in the United States. So we formed our model based on what we saw working in other communities and changed our charter and tried to assist the other credit unions who were members of Inner City Association of Minority Credit Unions. As I mentioned earlier, about 62 credit unions. And at the same time, we did research on what our members needed and wanted. And one of the main things they wanted was to be able to save and borrow daily, just like a regular bank would do. And because we were small and totally volunteer, we were not able to do that. But in the meantime, I met a gentleman who was a community organizer in our community, WECO, Woodland East community, and the business people in the community wanted to work with the other, our church really, and started working with our credit union to be able to offer what we wanted to offer. So teaming up with WECO, which was a 501c3, and Mount Sinai Credit Union, we together were able to open a freestanding institution, and we did that by approaching the banks in our community who had left buildings in the community that were vacant, and so we approached them about giving one of the buildings to us. We chose the building we wanted, and at that time there were a lot of mergers going on, and the leverage was used to get a building, freestanding building, for $1 a year through WECO, which was a 501c3, and the bank received credit for helping this small credit union, Faith Credit Union, and that's how we got our building, and it did not stop their merger because it was in both of our self-interest for us to be able to have this building and continue to offer services in the community. And our responsibility was to just be able to pay all of the taxes and the utilities and all those things, which was a real challenge for us at the time.
Okay.
But as soon as we did that, we grew so fast that our regulators said we were outgrowing our reserves, and it presented a new challenge for us. But it allowed us to be open every day of the business week. And we had members coming from all of the places in our community, and one of them was Longwood Cooperative Housing, which my husband was the manager of. And so the people in this 828-unit housing co-op could also become members of Faith Community United Credit Union. And others in the community who were not members of any church or members of other churches who did not have credit unions were all accepted into Faith Community United Credit Union. And that is when we really started to grow. And from the very meager beginning, we, by the 90s, were $2.5 million in assets at that point.
So you started with about $500?
Yes, we started with about $500. And in the 90s, we were at $2. And then we found out through working with the Federation out of New York that it was possible for us to get grants and other assistance. And so we went ahead and did those things. We were able to get a grant to help all of the minority credit unions, inner city credit unions, as well as became a CDFI credit union. And
what's that?
Community Development Financial Institution. So it's certified by the U.S. Treasury, and it shows that we are operating at the point and accepting assistance to low-income people. And in fact, when I became president of the board, we helped establish this CDFI fund that was under Bill Clinton period around 1994. And now many credit unions and other groups are helped by the CDFI fund. We had to match money. We were able to receive a $350,000 grant for operations. We became computerized. We had the building, but we didn't have everything else we needed. And so this grant helped us to computerize all of our records and all of that, and to pay staff, because, I mentioned that all these other years we were working for free and just with volunteers. But when we opened 7 days a week, we had to pay staff, and that's when I first started to become as a paid employee. In fact, I had to work for years to make up myself a salary and to be able to open 401c3, and all of those things we were able to do because of our growth with the help of the one bank, which is now Key Bank. It was Society Bank at the time, and the other banks, we partnered to have them put money in the credit union and to help us to get the match to be able to help the low-income people in our community, which is what CDFI fund required of us, to show that we were helping those who were unbanked or who were unable to get credit in the community. And that is how we did that and came up with products like our Grace Loan and
Before you go into Grace Loan, I want to go back to this education piece, and then I really want to get to the Grace and the amazing Grace Loan.
Right, okay.
Okay, so you were training people how to be credit worthy.
Yes.
So that they can save and get credit and have a credit report and have a good score. You're training people that.
Yes.
Now, in your story, I don't hear where you went to college. Did you go to college?
No, not initially. I went part-time a little at Finn College, which is now Cleveland State, but I did not until I worked with the National Federation, and we established a credit union accreditation. We found that there were so many people running credit unions who did not have the college degree, and we established a program with the Southern New Hampshire University where we could all go to school and get accreditation from Southern New Hampshire University. So those of us who were on the board or individuals who were members of the National Federation of Community Development Credit Union went to these classes for 2 weeks out of 5 years. And the grant from the Federation paid our way to this school, and we graduated with a special certification in community development credit unions from Southern New Hampshire University.
So is that 2 weeks a year for 5 years?
Yes. It was 2 weeks because we were unable to get away from our credit unions because we were so important to the growth of the credit union and the operation. So that is how we did it. The Federation and Southern New Hampshire University, where the first credit union is Manchester, New Hampshire. I don't know if you're familiar with the first credit union. It's called St. Mary's Bank, and they are known for community development assistance, and that's how we establish our accreditation.
Well, the reason I wanted to go back to that, because what I have found in credit in cooperatives is like you get the knowledge you need to run whatever business you're in.
Yes.
And that sounds like what you all did over a 5-year period, have concentrated knowledge to help you to run a credit union, know how it operates, how it functions, what reports you need, what kinds of technology you may need, how to handle people, how to handle projects, how to handle the federal government and whatever they want you to report on. But you get the information you need. And I've also found that in the cooperative world, people really love helping each other, giving people the knowledge they need, like St. Mary's would teach you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you're saying yes like that, it's like you're in the pew saying, okay, yes, that's what happened. That's your experience also?
Oh, yes. That is what the cooperative movement is noted for helping each other. And even though there was a lot of discrimination back in those days, we found that there were always good people and good institutions who were willing to assist you in what you were trying to do. And so I give credit to those people at St. Mary's Bank and at Southern New Hampshire University.
We're going to take our last break, and we'll be right back. And I want to get into this mercy loan and grace loan and amazing grace. We'll be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
We're in our last segment. This is Vernon Oakes with Everything Cooperative. We're talking to Mrs. Rita Hayes from Cleveland, Ohio. And, you know, Mrs. Haynes, your story is very inspiring.
Thank you.
I really enjoy it. Now, you talked about helping people to change their mindset so they'll know, how to make good life choices. You talked about your own education. Your husband and you got married almost 60 years ago, or is it 60 years now?
It'll be 60 years August 3rd of this year.
Okay, all right. And you're almost 60 years in a credit union, volunteering for 30 years, and then you had to figure out how you could get the credit union to grow and get the income and a building so you could get a salary. And the other people grow in terms of 5 days a week and so forth. Fascinating. Without a college degree, and I have 3 college degrees. Well, my granddaddy said, get an education, boy. That's the only thing a white man won't take from you. And my mother and father just kept saying, if you want to have a good life, get an education. But what I have found is you don't need a college degree. You need knowledge. And you wouldn't got the knowledge you needed.
Yes.
Okay. Both to your husband, to start a business and run a business. And I hear he was selling property, maybe buying property, but he's also managing property. And that's what I do for my daytime job, Mrs. Haynes. I have a property management company.
Right. Well, that is what he did. He was a property manager and managed, as I mentioned, Longwood was one of the first Section 8 low-income housing projects in the city of Cleveland. So that was part of how I was able to volunteer, because I was him and then volunteering at the credit union. But he sustained us through being a property manager in Cleveland, and also went into owning franchises. Popeye's franchise, one of the first in Cleveland and St. Louis, where he's from.
All right. Yeah, you're total inspiration. Now, so we've talked about a lot of the principles volunteer and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, put money in, take money out when there's a profit.
Right.
Autonomy and independence, have to be able to make the decisions. The members have to be able to make the decisions. We
Right.
talked a lot about education, training, and information, which is the bedrock of co-ops, which is the main reason I like co-ops. I didn't learn about co-ops, Mrs. Haynes, until I started managing housing co-ops.
Oh, boy, yes.
And so
yes.
I was older, nowhere in the 3 degrees did I hear anything about a co-op.
No.
The sixth one is cooperation among co-ops, and you've talked about that with St. Mary's Bank and helping you, and then other co-ops in the Federation.
Yes.
People just helping each other, and then you can have the housing co-op help the credit union by becoming members and putting deposits. But you know,
Yes.
the credit union, I don't know if you did this or not, can also help the housing co-op by, if there are share loans, these small $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 share loans, then the credit union could do that, which most banks won't do. The smaller credit union, well, a lot of banks won't do share loans at all.
Yes, and a lot of banks won't do small loans at all. And small loans is what we really were able to make the credit union grow through. A lot of small loans because people couldn't afford the real large loans at first, and they started small, and if they paid that back correctly, then we up their line of credit and give them a debit or credit card and ATM access. We have it all today, but it started with the smaller loans and share secured loans.
Now, is that called the faith loan?
Yes, well, the
Grace
one
loan. Grace loan.
Share secured loan was a loan where you would borrow against your savings. And that's one of the ways we established credit, was to make a loan for $2,000, put it in our savings account, pay the loan off, and then you've got $2,000. You've also got good credit, and that was and you had insurance. So that was one of the things that we encouraged people to do, and it helped not only the individuals, but it also helped the credit union to grow, because that money in the savings helped us to add to our balance sheet, and be those were loans that you didn't have any risk on. And so that was one of the ways we grew and encouraged people, and it made sense to them. And many of those people went on to purchase their first automobile, some of them houses, businesses. I don't know if I mentioned that we became an SBA lender also, and we had a very unique arrangement with the city of Cleveland, where Antioch Baptist Church Credit Union and Faith were able to team up and work with the Community Development Department of the city of Cleveland and make loans to contractors who were locked out of the business of doing business with the city.
So they couldn't get a bond.
They couldn't get a bond. So we together made an arrangement where they could borrow the $50,000 or whatever they needed on the contract that they were getting with the city of Cleveland, and they would pay us automatically back out when they were paid. And so that was a unique arrangement which worked well for those contractors, allowing them or taking away the issue from the city that they weren't bondable.
Yep.
And so that was one of the things that we were very proud of, helping through the Cleveland Business League and the city of Cleveland to be able to help these smaller contractors or subcontractors be able to get contracts with the city by us helping them to afford the bond.
What's so exciting about your story is that with racism and discrimination, black folks, we have not been giving access to credit and sometimes education. Matter of fact, it's always been interesting to me. The two things that they try to keep away from us is knowledge. It won't get us educated or won't let us vote. Those are the two things that sort of like to keep us down. And keeping us down means they can make more money off of us, like the payday loans or whatever else. But you've come in and you put things in place to both train people to get the mental attitude functioning better and the financial piece, both individual and business. And I applaud you. Are you and your credit union, because I know you didn't do it by yourself, as a group effort.
Oh, no. It took a whole lot of people. Many of them are deceased at this time. But we have boards who look for ways to solve problems instead of complaining about the problem.
Amen.
Look for ways to solve the problem. And we sat at the table with other large credit unions and watched how things that they were doing, and we put them into practice in a way that would help our people. And through going to meetings and chapter schools through the Ohio Credit Union League, sponsored by CUNA, we were able to learn how to do the things that were unique to our particular need in our community and our people.
So your co-op was developed, which is the seventh principle, to solve community problems. That's concern for the community, concern for the people.
That's correct. And that's what we did. We solved problems. And one of the major problems that we saw happening in our community when we first were able to get checking accounts or share draft accounts was when the banks moved out of the community, payday lenders moved in, and they just flooded our community. In fact, it made me think that it was a planned arrangement, because payday lenders were only required that you have a checking account. And if you had a checking account, they would loan you money very quickly with no questions asked, but it was at over 700% interest.
Right.
So we found out that our members were taking our hard-earned checking accounts going to payday lenders, and we just simply asked them, well, why wouldn't you borrow it from us? And they said because the payday lenders made it so easy. They were open on Sundays. They were open all the time. They didn't ask them any questions. They didn't run a credit report. They just did this real easy. Well, of course they did, because they were making so much money on it.
Yeah, they take your firstborn and everything you got.
Right. They do everything. And so decided to make a loan like what they did, and write a policy that would allow us to make a loan to a person who had direct deposit with us and without taking a credit report. And then we could do it quickly like the payday lenders were doing.
And Ms. Haynes, we're out of time.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, it goes by quick.
Well, there's so much more, but it's been a pleasure talking with you, and maybe people can read more online about Faith Community United and its history.
And I'd love to have you back on. We'll see about getting that done. Thank you so very much. And
thank you.
Everybody out there, have a wonderful week, and please work cooperatively.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOF and 95.9 FM.